told us the war was over. They told us the killing had stopped, but they never told us what happened to the ones who didn't come home. I'm not a soldier. Not really. My name's Noah Whitlock. I'm a freelance photojournalist from Manchester, and in October of last year I made a mistake. A big one. I'd been chasing this passion project for months, documenting forgotten World War II battlefields across Europe, places that had never been covered in glossy magazines or headline exposes, ruins buried under vines, trenches swallowed by time. I wanted raw stories, ghosts, truth, and that's how I found myself deep in the Ardennes forest, Belgium, alone, stupid. I'd rented a crumbling stone house off an obscure local listing, not Airbnb, not Booking.com, just a dusty website, archived by a guy who barely spoke English. But it was cheap, remote, and according to legend, built atop an old German listening post from the winter of 1944. The Battle of the Bulge had torn this place apart. Hundreds died in the trees. Men froze with their eyes open. Locals said the forest still echoed with whispers when the fog was thick. Of course, I didn't believe that. Not then. The house stood at the edge of the woods like it was leaning away from them. Its roof sagged under decades of snow rot. Its walls, a faded patchwork of gray stone and ivy. The front door stuck, and the inside smelled dead. Not rotten, not musty, just lifeless. I set up my gear, hung my coat, ignored the chill that never left the floorboards. I was here to work, but from the first night, something felt wrong. I woke at 3:33 a.m., not because of a sound, but because it was too quiet. No wind, no insects, not even the distant rustle of leaves. Just this, pressure, like something huge was breathing beneath the house and I was resting on its chest. I checked the windows, pitch black outside, but the hallway light was on, and I hadn't left it that way. I remember whispering to myself, maybe the power's glitchy, but my gut was screaming otherwise. I turned it off, went back to bed, didn't sleep. The next day I started exploring the woods. I had my cannon, my drone, a backpack full of snacks. The forest was breathtaking, gold and red leaves blanketing the earth like fire. But deeper in, the trees grew closer, too close. I swear, I found a part of the forest where no light came through, even at noon. And in that stretch of dark, I found it. The bunker. It was half buried in the slope of a hill. A rusted iron door cracked open just enough to tempt idiots like me. The swastika had long been chiseled off, but the concrete still smelled of iron and mold and war. I went in. Inside, the air was thick, not just stale, heavy, like it hadn't moved in 80 years. The hallway sloped downward into a room that had clearly collapsed. But along the side wall, I saw markings, carvings in the concrete. Not German, not language, symbols, circles, a line through a sun, a triangle bleeding into a tree. It didn't feel military. It felt older. There was also a single name etched in English, uneven and raw like someone had scraped it with a belt buckle. He's still here. That night I had a dream. I was lying in my bed at the soldier's house, but when I looked down, I was wearing a Nazi uniform, mud on my boots, blood on my hands, and someone, or something, was knocking from inside the walls. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, pause, 3 again. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. But worse, when I sat up, I heard knocking from the floorboards. I froze. It came again. 3, 2, 3. Exactly like the dream. I told myself it was rats, a pipe. But I didn't go back to sleep. I sat in the kitchen until dawn, the only light a flickering candle I hadn't remembered lighting. That day, I called the man who rented me the place. I told him there was something wrong with the wiring. Maybe rats. His voice, cracked with age and cigarette smoke, said something that made my blood chill. It begins with the knocking. I asked him what he meant. He hung up. That night I tried to leave, packed my gear, loaded the car, put the key in the ignition, dead. I wasn't surprised. I should have been, but part of me already knew. The road out had vanished under a wall of fog. I couldn't see 3 feet in front of me, so I went back inside. And this time, the lights didn't work. All of them. Out. The only glow came from the living room fireplace, which I hadn't lit. and sitting beside it was a helmet, issue, German, blood-stained, and behind it, footprints, bare feet, caked in ash, leading into the basement. The house didn't have a basement, not on any blueprint, not from the outside, but now there was a door, old wood, iron handle, slightly open, inside, darkness, and breathing. That's when I ran, out, the front door, into the fog, no flashlight, no sense of direction, but the trees closed in. The fog turned thick as cement, and I saw something standing in the clearing, a man, or what had once been one, tall, gaunt, wearing a tattered Wehrmacht uniform, but his skin peeled like wet paper. His mouth hung open, and from it spilled the sound of static, radio static. He raised his arm, not in a salute, but pointing toward me, and then the forest screamed, every tree, every leaf, a high-pitched shriek like a signal torn from hell's radio tower. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was back in the house, on the floor, by the fireplace, the helmet gone. My camera was beside me, still on, battery full. I checked the memory, and the last file wasn't a photo. It was a video, shaky, grainy, and in it, I was sleeping, filmed from across the room. A figure stood over me, face obscured by shadow, and then it whispered something in. I didn't sleep after that. Couldn't. Would you? That video. Watching myself, so still, so vulnerable, while something stood over me, watching, breathing, filming. My hands shook the entire morning. But the worst part? I couldn't remember how I got back inside the house. I didn't walk here. I didn't want to be here. It was as if the house had pulled me back in. I tried again to leave, packed everything. Camera, SD cards, my journal. This time, I walked. I didn't care if it took 10 hours to reach the nearest town, but the forest didn't want me gone. The path I'd taken in, gone. Literally, the trees had moved, shifted, rearranged like a maze. My GPS just spun in circles, no signal. Even the air felt thicker, like trying to breathe underwater. I wandered for maybe 30 minutes. Then, I saw the bunker again, but this time, the door was wide open, and there was light inside. I didn't go in, not yet. I backed away slowly, turned around, and standing just 20 feet behind me was a woman. She was barefoot, pale, wearing a 1940s nurse's uniform soaked in dried red. Her eyes were solid black. No whites, no iris, just black. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe, and, in her hand, she held my camera. Except, I still had my camera slung across my chest. I turned, I ran, didn't look back. By the time I burst out of the woods, the house was there again, just standing, waiting, like it knew I'd return. I locked every door, boarded the windows with what little I had, even blocked the basement door. The one that wasn't there 2 days ago. Then I did the dumbest thing imaginable. I reviewed the video again, slowed it frame by frame, and in the last second, just before the figure stepped out of the shot, there was something on its arm. A tattoo. Not German, not military, American. A name. L. Harper. I froze, because that name was in my journal. Day 1. When I was digging through local archives, I'd come across a footnote about a lost American squadron trapped behind German lines in this region. One of the missing soldiers was named Lieutenant Luke Harper, presumed dead, body never recovered, but his name was carved in the cement wall of the bunker, and now it was burned into the arm of the thing watching me sleep. I needed answers, so I did something even dumber. I went into the basement. That door, the one that wasn't on the original blueprint, now it was real, solid, cold to the touch. Opened it. The stairs spiraled downward, far deeper than any house should go, and with every step, the air grew colder, and the radio static grew louder. Yes, static. No radio in sight. Just the sound of one, crackling, hissing, layered with distant voices calling out in German, and then English, and then something I couldn't recognize at all. At the bottom, I found a room. It was circular, stone walls, crates of rusted helmets and rifles, but in the center stood a wooden table, and on that table, maps, dog tags, and a single photograph. Black and white image of the house, surrounded by soldiers, but every face was scratched out, except one, Harper. The caption beneath it read, "End station, Niemand kommt zurück, last station, no one returns." I backed away, and that's when I heard breathing. Behind me, slow, wet animal. I turned, camera up, but the lens cracked on its own, and in the dark I saw them. Figures, in uniform. American, German, even British, but all of them wrong. Their skin sagged, their mouths hung open, and their eyes completely missing. Each carried something, a photo, a tag, a bone, relics, and they were whispering one word over and over. Zurück, Zurück, Zurück. Return, return, return. I bolted, scrambled back up the stairs. The house was different now. Walls were covered in new writing, black ink smeared in symbols and names and dates I'd never seen. The radio in the kitchen, the one that hadn't worked all week, was on, broadcasting a message on loop, a man's voice. American. "This is Lawton Harper. We never left. We can't leave. We were sacrificed, buried beneath the trees. If you hear this, you're already part of it." Then the station shifted. German voices. Static. A woman crying. Then silence. I yanked the plug, but the voice kept going. "This is Lieutenant Harper. We never left." That night I dreamed again. This time I wasn't in the house. I was underground, sitting at that table, surrounded by the figures. They spoke in whispers I couldn't understand. And then they handed me a photo. It was me, standing in the forest, camera in hand, but in the background, standing behind a tree, was Harper, and beside him was a version of me, but older, eyes hollow, skin cracked, wearing a Wehrmacht jacket. I woke up screaming, and someone was humming in the hallway. Crept to the door, heart pounding. The hum was low, rhythmic, like a lullaby being played on a detuned record, and when I peeked through the crack, there were footprints, bare, leading away from my door, and toward the attic. I didn't even know the house had an attic. I followed. I had to, step by step, floor creaking under me. The air felt electric, like a storm was crawling through the walls. The attic door was open, and inside, there were hundreds of photos, pinned to the rafters, strung on wire, hanging from the ceiling. Photos of people in this house, some in military uniform, some modern, all of them scared, their eyes scratched out, mouths stitched with red ink, and in the center, one photo remained untouched. It was me, taken yesterday, and written across the bottom. "You came to take pictures, now you're part of the frame." Behind me, the door slammed shut, and from the darkness came the whispers again. The attic door slammed, and the whispering grew louder. I pressed myself against the far wall, breath caught in my throat. The air shifted, sharp, cold, like it had teeth. The light bulb above flickered, then popped, drowning everything in black. Then, silence. Not empty silence. Watching silence. I reached for my flashlight, flicked it on, but the beam didn't reach far. Dust curled in the air like cigarette smoke. The photos still hung, still swayed, still watched. I moved toward the one with my face on it. It was newer than the others, not just newer, fresh, like it had been developed minutes ago. I touched it, and the moment I did, everything changed. Suddenly I wasn't in the attic, I was in the forest. Night, fog thicker than breath, except the trees weren't trees. They were men, dozens of them, standing perfectly still, uniforms rotting, rifles fused to their arms. Some wore Allied gear, others Axis, all of them staring at me. And in the distance I heard it, boots stomping, marching, a cadence, but there was no ground, only mud, endless, wet, sucking mud. Then a flare shot up, red light painted the sky, and I saw it, the trench, miles long, winding through the trees like a scar. Bodies lined the sides, some buried to their necks, some nailed to crosses of barbed wire. A wooden sign stood crooked at the entrance. It read, Station 0. Guests remain forever. A voice behind me whispered, right into my ear. You wanted a story. This one's still being written. I turned, and Harper stood there. Half his face was gone, blown away, revealing blackened bone. His dog tags clinked softly against his ribs, and in his hand was my journal. He opened it. Pages turned on, their own, and every page was now written in my handwriting. Future entries, things I hadn't lived yet. Day 8, I find the other survivors, but I lose my name. Day 12, they carve the coordinates into my spine. Day 15, I stop remembering who I was. He handed it back. His fingers were ice, bone white. Then he said almost softly, "We didn't die in battle. We died in command. They sent us here, to vanish, to test." "To test what?" I asked. His voice dropped. "What happens when memory refuses to die?" Suddenly, gunfire, deafening. The woods exploded in chaos. Screams in multiple languages, and I was there, in it, ducking for cover, heart pounding, and somehow holding a rifle. I wasn't me anymore. I was in uniform, German insignia. I looked at my hands, young, strong, calloused. "My name tag," said Monsieur Kruger. A bullet tore past my head. Harper screamed in English, and just like that, it hit me. This wasn't a vision. This was a memory, a looping, dying echo of the final battle, a psychic recording carved into the land itself, and I was inside it. I ran. I ran until the gunfire faded, until the mud turned to stone, until I hit a wall, literally, the concrete wall of the bunker. Only now, it wasn't abandoned. It was full, alive, lit by yellow bulbs, and flooded with orders being barked in multiple tongues. A German officer shoved past me. A British soldier screamed from a cell, and on the far wall, a blackboard, with one word written 100 times. Vergessen, forgotten. Suddenly, alarms blared. Men started convulsing. Screaming turned to gurgling. Eyes melted. Blood poured from radios. Something was being tested. I ducked, covered my ears, fell to the floor, and as soon as I hit it, I was back in the attic, covered in sweat, cold, blood on my palms. Not mine. I rushed downstairs. Every hallway was wrong, longer, twisting, stairs didn't end. Windows showed trenches instead of trees. I had to get out. I found the front door, yanked it open, and standing there was me, but rotting, dressed in full SS uniform, eyes glowing red behind cracked glasses. It grinned. I slammed the door, backed, away, ran through the kitchen, only to find the same door again, open, waiting. No matter where I ran, I kept ending up at the same entrance. The house was feeding. I dropped to my knees, begged. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I just wanted to tell the story. Please let me go." And then I heard the voice, not in my ears, in my mind. "Tell it then, but not as you, as us." My vision went black. I woke up in the forest, morning sun filtering through burnt trees. The house was gone. Not collapsed, not hidden, just erased, like it had never been there. The clearing where it had stood was nothing but moss-covered earth now, not even the imprint of a foundation. No debris, no ashes, not a single splinter. The air still held that copper tang, blood and ozone, but the land was silent. I staggered to my feet, knees weak. My journal was still in my hand, mud-streaked, pages torn and soaked through. I flipped through it. It was blank. No entries. No writing. Not even a title, except for the last page. One sentence burned into the paper like it had been seared there. "You are the last witness. Don't let them forget." My breath caught. I looked around, heart thudding like a war drum. The forest was watching, listening. I made my way back toward town. Somehow. I don't remember walking. Just trees passing like silent sentinels. No birds. No insects, no wind, only the sound of my boots squelching against the earth. It took hours, or minutes, or days. When I finally reached the outskirts, the world felt wrong. Too sharp, too clean. Cars moved too fast. Lights were too bright. I collapsed on the sidewalk near the gas station where it had all started. A clerk ran out, called an ambulance. I told them I'd been lost hiking, that I'd fallen, hit my head. They didn't believe me. The hospital kept me for observation. A psychologist came in, soft-spoken and gentle-eyed, asking me about trauma, about hallucinations, about memory disassociation. I nodded, said whatever they wanted to hear. They let me go, but I wasn't me anymore. My name still matched my ID, but that name felt borrowed, like an outfit I no longer fit into. Back in my apartment, I started writing, filling page after page with what I remembered, not just the house, but what came before, memories that weren't mine, names I'd never known, coordinates, dates. I'd wake up shouting in languages I didn't speak, draw blueprints in my sleep, military formations, radio frequencies. I reached out to historians, military archivists, even fringe conspiracy boards. No one had heard of Station Zero, until one night, an email arrived. No subject, no sender, just a single line. Welcome to the Forgotten Regiment. Attached was a photograph. Me wearing a uniform, standing in front of the house. Except, the photo was dated 1944, the same photo that had hung in the attic. I tried to track the sender. Dead end. Everything routed through dead servers and encrypted loops. I burned the journal, deleted my backups. Didn't matter. The story had already started telling itself. I began noticing others. At bus stops, in bookstores, on the subway. People, with that same hollow gaze. Same twitch when loud noises went off. Same faded tattoo behind the ear. A single zero inside a circle. We never spoke, but we knew. We were the ones who came back. The ones the war forgot, but the house remembered. And every year on the same night, I feel it. The pull. In dreams, I see the trench again. The flare. The sign. Guests. Remain forever. Sometimes I hear Harper's voice, whispering through the static of old radios. You wanted a story. This one's still being written. And I know it's not over. The house didn't vanish. It moved, waiting for the next writer, the next wanderer, the next soldier. And when they find it, and they will, the attic will,